John Briscoe, running for the U.S. House of Representatives here in California's 42nd Congressional District against Robert Garcia, who is a one-term incumbent. And I appreciate you coming at the very last minute. You were literally notified a couple of hours ago, and you rushed up here. I did my research very quickly, which is why I have my laptop in front of me. So thank you for coming on such short notice.
Oh, where Joe goes, I go.
Perfect. I always start with just doing a very easy personal background introduction. I saw that you grew up here in Long Beach. You went to Long Beach High School, and you've been in the area.
And junior high school too.
Junior high school. And pretty much since. So go ahead and talk about how you grew up and your family still in the area.
I grew up with a mother and a father, which was lucky, but they got divorced after 25 years. I'd already moved out.
You've made it almost twice as long then. You're very close to 50 years, I saw.
49 years of being married, yes.
Congratulations.
An eternity in dog years.
Okay, this election isn't hinging, it's not going to affect your marriage, is it, if you make it or not?
No, my wife's been through the election drama with me. I've run for this congressional seat, held by the bulk of Long Beach 3 other times, meaning 6 times, because there's a primary and a final. I've won the primary every single time, beating other Democrats, beating other Republicans, to be on the final ballot. The first 2 times was against Alan Lowenthal, a legend in the district and in his own mind and every other place, former mayor, former whatever he was, all that stuff. And then he retired, as he should have, leaving an open seat for the mayor of Long Beach to pop in, Roberto Garcia, that is his given name, Roberto. Okay. And he jumped in and ran, and then there's me. And the party and the people at R looked at him and looked at me. I won the primary once again. And they pumped in, that they being Sam Bankman-Fried, the corrupt billionaire no more in jail now, from FTX cryptocurrency, $3 million through their PAC into his campaign. I was on TV, I had friends calling me all over the city, saying, hey, I saw you on TV last night. And Roberto he didn't do it. It was all outside, non-colluding, non-agreed to. Commercials about me, I was really flattered. And he did 3 separate direct mail flights, they're called, when you mail out a piece of paper to every home in the district. Yeah. It's like $700,000 a piece, because it's a direct mail, full color, single piece, nothing but John Briscoe and Roberto Garcia.
Well funded.
And it was well funded. It was great. I didn't have a chance against that kind of overwhelming odds, because the district is 55% Democrat registered. It's a huge number. And it's only 16%, very tiny, 16% Republican, of which only half of those Republicans ever get their sassafras out of bed to go vote. So the district effectively has about 8% Republican show-up voting rate. The last election, this last one in March, California, I earned 35% of the vote.
I saw that.
That actually looks good to funders and contributors and stuff, as it turns out, and there's some things happening in that regard. But
clearly you were pulling over independents and maybe even Democrats already in the primary election.
Yes, exactly. And I'd say it's 4 times more Democrats, and no political parties voted for me than Republicans, because the Republicans are only 8%.
So what motivates you to keep running every time?
Well, because we have so much to do. The economy, and the Congress passes the budget. We cannot afford multi-trillion-dollar expenditures on windmills and fairy tales and other dreams. We can't afford it, and that's caused the inflation as a result. The Democrat Congress that passed those things in the first 2 years. We were stuck with about a 30% inflation the last 3.5 years. And you can look at the CPI measures, there's all kinds of inflation measures, but the real inflation for my voters and my residents in the California 42 is around 30%. That's $6 gasoline a gallon, $6 a dozen eggs. The things that people pay for are killing them. And I'm going to stop it. I'm going to stop spending the money and stop doing the things that cause the inflation, starting in Congress, because Congress holds the purse strings. They hold the money. Second is the other 3 reasons is the crime is too high. And crime from homelessness is the source of the crime I'm interested in, because way over 50% of homeless people are substance use users. And then there's also mental illness. In front of my office, I own an office in downtown Long Beach, and I own a property management company. I'm a licensed broker in California, I have 5 employees, I'm a small business. There's a dead person 2 doors down a couple months ago. A homeless dead person laying on the sidewalk when everybody came into work. And that's part of the problem with homelessness. The other day, a month ago, I was sitting in the office looking out the window, And there's a woman walking down the street, and I thought she had a bodysuit on. I thought, oh, that's kind of odd, including all the accoutrements. Anyway, she was buck naked, walking down the street. She's mentally ill. We need, and the things that I will do in Congress is to provide the funding and programs to open up Fairview, open up Norwalk, open up Camarillo, mental illness institutions that Ronald Reagan closed, and was going to put mental illness into the communities, which he didn't do, and put people that are mentally ill into care, because she shouldn't be walking down the street buck naked.
Sure.
She's
so
a danger.
yeah, let's go right into the issues, and we'll stick with homelessness. And you've obviously tied it to mental health, and believe that we need. So I would assume that you believe we need to pull these people off the street and get them into mental health programs, rehab programs if there's drug use involved, and you would allocate funding to doing that.
That's a big blanket. There's two small blankets that cover those issues, because some number of people are just mentally ill and need help. The biggest problem, and Long Beach is a campground along the river, people sleeping on the sidewalks. The biggest issue is alcohol first, and then marijuana use. Now, alcohol and marijuana are both legal for adults to use. However, in the state of California, it is against the law. I've looked up the code. $1,000 fine, 6 months in jail, or both, for being under the influence on public property. Not drunk at 0.8 like driving, but under the influence, which is a much lower standard.
Yeah.
So if the police are going along and they see somebody with a can of Old English 800 laying next to, well, I don't know what that is actually, but yeah, I do. Old English 800 laying on the ground next to them in the park and they're sleeping, that violates the city code for no drinking in the public park, which they don't enforce. Then beyond that, it's certainly grounds for suspicion of under the influence. They need to rouse the person, make them get up, and determine if they think they're under the influence. And then, this is where the money comes in, the programs, they go to an immediate adjudication. That means go to court with a judge that same day in front of the judge, and they say, Your Honor, he blew at 0.5, and he was staggering all over, he was clearly under the influence, and on the public park. We want to enforce the California state code, not the city code. And the judge will say, okay, well, that's fine, and he'll talk to the rapscallion that was there.
So are these local and state issues then, or where would you come in as a member of the House?
I come as a member of Congress is funding and paying for this. We're going to have a whole lot of judges out there to do these adjudications. The judge will say, Dear drunkard, would you like to go to jail? No, Your Honor. Then you'll have to pay a $1,000 fine, I'll let you go. Well, Your Honor, if I had $1,000, I wouldn't be a homeless person. Mm-hmm. So then you might need to go to rehab. Okay. So there's money for adjudication and money for rehab. And the rehab programs can be 30 days. It should probably be 90 days, not Rehab Riviera stuff, but a real rehab program for alcohol, for substance use abuse. After they get out, the word recidivism comes to mind. And for your audience, recidivism means repeat. They're likely to repeat. Most people that do these things like to be under the influence. The second time, there's no option of going to rehab. It's either go to jail or pay the fine. Okay. And they don't have $1,000, so then they take the consequence where the judge dishes out. Sure. There might need to be
a little bit of leniency in the beginning, but for repeat offenders, we need to find a more permanent solution.
Getting sober isn't leniency. I mean, maybe it is to some people. That's just get sober and don't be doing it on public property. But yeah, leniency. There is the out. Okay. Once, because we can't afford to send people back to rehab repeatedly. The mental illness one's a different matter. That needs to be assessed by an expert, and if they need to be locked down or kept down, that needs to be assessed. You have to notify family and find out if they have people around them that can take care of them. But that needs to be done as well. And having no facilities to put people into that they cannot harm themselves or embarrass themselves walking around buck naked is the other side, and that's a financing thing as well.
Okay. Let's go to another financing issue, but one that's related to your third main thing, which is the border. Obviously, the United States is spending collectively hundreds of billions of dollars a year housing, food, health services for the illegal immigrant population. The Republican Party, Trump, has a very strong position, shut down the border completely, mass deportation program. As a Republican candidate, are you in line with these programs, or do you have other ideas?
I have other ideas. Some of those things are a good idea. They can't all be done tomorrow, today. Yeah. We need to shut the border. We need to control our border. We let more people in legally in this country than any other country on the face of the earth. 4 million people a year apply and get in under our immigration inbound program. That's a lot. And we could increase that to 5 or 6 million if we wanted. That's an application fill out. We know who you are. We know what you do. And by the way, the majority of 50% of those people that come in under our immigration program, the application one, are family sponsored, meaning You know what that means when somebody sponsors an immigrant?
Yeah, they have existing family here, and then they're trying to get their brothers, sisters,
Oh,
family
way more than
members
that.
to come over too.
They sign a document that promises that person coming in, grandma, grandpa, tio, tia, abuela, abuela, abuelo, coming in, will never be on the public welfare, will never take any public funds or public services. They'll all be provided by the sponsor under penalty of, I guess they ship them back, I'm not sure. So it's a great system. It puts responsibility on the family, which is good, and it cuts costs and expenses. We can't have 18 million people, that Trump guy says like 30 million, and I heard him say 21 million. We can't have 18 million people flooding across our border, invading us. We can't handle it in just 3.5 years. It's more than the population of states, or several states combined. So there's too many people coming in. My family's immigrant. My mother's parents were both immigrants. She didn't learn to speak English until she was 4 years old.
I saw that your heritage goes back to Mexico.
My father's, mi tatabuela was from Baja California. She came up in 1905, married somebody in San Diego. Her daughter moved of all places to Compton, married the mayor of Compton, which Compton now is a major Hispanic city. Ironically, it wasn't back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, and my son's married to a Chinese national. So she is a green card carrying U.S. resident and a Chinese national. So I've got immigrants on all sides. I love immigrants.
So it sounds like you're in favor of legal immigration programs, and I'll just go into this issue for a little bit because I know it came up in my district when I was running, that certain countries like India and China, we have the country cap on them, and so they have a backlog of literally 100 years for the country of India, and China likewise has a large backlog. It sounds like you're in favor of maintaining or improving those legal immigration processes, but complete no to illegal immigration.
So that's the word they used, a cap. Do you know the source of that so-called cap thing was, we used to only allow white people from Europe to come in, and no Africans, and no Chinese, and no Indians. And that was changed 50, 70 years ago to an allocation system to each country based on the country size and the number of people. Yeah. So it is a cap, but it's a cap based on if there's there's no such fair thing as fairness, but on a fairness approach to India gets more people than Formosa or more than Japan. The trouble is that there's not nearly as many people in Japan that want to come to the U.S. as there are in India, and so Japan may not use up their quota.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but maybe Japan uses it all up too. The cap you called it is not a cap. It is a cap, but it's a quota by country based on country size and based on the historic use. So, and I think there's any number of ways to do it. I don't think we should limit everybody to Northern Europeans. I'm reading a book right now called The Great Hunger. It's about the Irish potato famine. And what a horrible thing. They were dying, they were wearing nothing, they had no clothes, they'd sold their clothes to make money to buy food in Ireland. So there's horrible things happening. My opponent wants everybody and anybody to come in to make more money. To make more money. That's not the basis for immigration in my view. I think the familial and the quota system are the source and the basis for immigration, not everybody and anybody come in. And by the way, I want to draw your attention to something. If you come into the country and identify as an asylum seeker and you sit down with a border guard who should be catching drug mules and should be catching child sex trafficking people, and they get in while they're working on this. When you come in, they take your picture, they take your fingerprints, they take your name, they take any other biographical information. Does that sound undocumented to you?
Yeah, not exactly.
Not exactly. This whole undocumented immigrant thing is, except for the getaways and the sex traffickers and the drug mules, is a crock.
Sure.
It's not undocumented, but they give them a cell phone and they come back in 7 years. I went to an RFK rally a year and a half ago before it was the big thing, and then way before he switched colors. And he's an amazing man. Have you ever heard him speak?
I have in person. I was actually at the event in Oakland where he announced Nicole Shanahan as his running mate.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that would have been like goosebumpy amazing.
It was good. I met him in person.
And she's still with him. And I have a picture of me up on the stage because he's really great. He lets everybody take a picture with him.
He does.
So his view is, I went to that, and he spent half his time on the stage talking about the immigration situation where he spent almost a month down at the border, interviewing, listening, looking, taking pictures. Did you have the same thing up there?
Down at Yuma, Arizona. He didn't talk as much about that then, but yeah, that was mostly the announcement of her as his running mate.
Okay. Well, anyway, so RFK's thing was that it's a huge problem. We can't handle that many people coming in, and the way we're handling it is not right. And then we have all these make-believe systems to let more. We're paying for people to fly in on a jet, for Pete's sakes. And just because the people in Venezuela voted in Hugo Chavez and now Maduro, who are both disasters for anything resembling freedom and liberty and the right to have anything, is not our fault or problem. You've got the people and politicians you deal with, and that doesn't give everybody in Venezuela a free right to come in to make more money. Venezuelans are great. I love Venezuelans, and there's a whole lot in Florida. But and the same thing with, what's the other country that has a lot of problems? Not Argentina. Yeah, it's not important. The issue is 18 million is way too many. We can handle 4 and 5 million, as we've done for many years, letting in millions and millions of people to come in legally, vetted, and looked at. And we're getting terrorists over the border too. They said they caught 150 terrorists in the last year. How many were getaways and they just ran across the border? You know what a getaway is? That means they come to the border guards are over processing asylum seekers, taking their fingerprints and their photograph and their story, and then all these people are running across behind them, literally, across behind.
Sounds like there's orchestration by the Mexican drug cartels. They'll send a flood of people this way.
Exactly, exactly. And that's what RFK said, RFKJ.
What's your take on the alleged bipartisan border bill that was passed? I don't really even have to finish up this question. I can tell you already know what I'm going to ask, because obviously the Republicans say that it would have been useless because everything was still optional to shut down the border at a cap of as soon as you hit 5,000 illegal immigrants per day. The administration has the ability to shut down the border.
The word alien doesn't come out of your mouth. Illegal immigrant is what you have to say. They're an alien. By law and by definition in federal code, they're an alien.
Yeah, I try to use whatever terminology the candidate I'm interviewing has. So the candidate earlier this morning called them undocumented. So I try to be as...
They're documented, except the getaways and those people. So on that one, no, that bill was... The devil's always in the details, and people don't pay attention to details. I will pay attention to all the details to the best of my ability when I'm in Congress.
Go ahead and explain, because the Democrats were blaming that it was the Republicans that shut it down because they wanted the border to remain an issue, and Trump wanted the border to remain an issue. And the Republicans are alleging that no, it was the 90-something executive actions done by the Biden administration that effectively lifted and opened the border.
Oh, all those things, and then more. So the bill added money for the Border Patrol. Ooh, woo, goody, goody. They could have done that without the bill. The bill also set the 5,000 a day cap. You left off the key thing. 5,000 illegal aliens coming in claiming some reason to be here, typically asylum. But it is only for people that are residents of a contiguous country, and that would be Canada and Mexico. There is no limit on the illegal aliens streaming in from any other part in the world. Really, that's asinine comes to mind, but that's not a nice word to use, so I won't use it. No, that's stupid. There is no limit from Africa, China, India, people flooding in, and you've seen the stories about these people flooding. South America, Venezuela, Nicaragua, no limits on any of those, just Mexico because it was contiguous. A small word buried deep down. The bill was a bad bill. The only good thing about it was maybe it proposed to spend more money on border guards, which are woefully inadequate. And that was, everything else was really trash, and it was shoved in there. I believe that bill was proposed because, who's the Republican guy that's the head of the Republicans in the Senate? Schumer? No, that's Schumer.
That's the Democrat side.
Well, who's the other guy?
Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell was desperate to get aid to Ukraine. And so that was the big deal, like, we'll put this bill over here if all of you will approve to keep our welfare line going for Ukraine.
Sure.
The border bill was bipartisan because the senator from Idaho, I think, is the one that wrote it, or was mainly Republican responsible. There's one Republican, I think 2 Democrats that wrote it.
I think Langford or somebody.
I'm not an expert, so why would I know all this stuff? But I care.
And I know that you had written in some of your materials that it's impacting your district specifically because it's lowering wages of really everybody. I'm guessing that you're a strong believer in the fundamentals of supply and demand. If there's a larger supply of unskilled labor, then the wages are going to be driven down for everyone. And will that specifically affect the residents in your district?
Well, I just spent a day in Huntington Park. The northern tier, I call it, the northern tier of my district is Bell Gardens, Huntington Park, Commerce, Cudahy, and Maywood are 90 and 95% Hispanic.
I noticed on your ballot statement you had a couple of Spanish words in there, stop.
I did. I did. Basta. Basta.
Basta.
Basta.
Okay.
Basta means enough.
Yeah,
Enough.
I had to look it up. I took 2 years of Spanish in high school. Didn't know that one.
It's a really strong word. It just sounds good when I say it even. And my campaign slogan is "Es uno de nosotros." He's one of us.
One of us. Okay.
I'm your family man. Es uno de nosotros. It's on all my literature and everything. Yeah, no, it does. I was just in Huntington Park, up and down the main street, and I was putting my signs up on retailers. 40% of the stores have my sign in the front. It's really cool. What I got feedback from was, yeah, they're lowering the wages and taking up jobs. They come in with a cell phone and all this business about the welfare that they get. They don't get any welfare to speak of. I mean, they get chump change stuff. If they're going to live here for 7 years and have to live here to get their hearing that they don't go to, they're not stealing money out of the system. They have to go get jobs, and it's odd jobs. And even though they have a legal status to get a job, they're not skilled, they don't speak English. So yeah, they're taking all the lower end jobs that maybe families would want to have. A lot of my Hispanic families in my district have 2 jobs and a wife who has a job to make ends meet. With the 30% inflation, really have to work to make ends meet. So that's taking the jobs to begin with, and then lowering the overall wage rate. And California and it's all sub rosa, because California's minimum wage is $16 now. It's supposed to go up to 18 with that ballot proposition. McDonald's burger flippers make $20 an hour. Those are not wages that any of these people are making when they go out and they get jobs. It's underground. It's underground work. And that, not that all the families that I represent, because they're going to show up to vote for me, are underground, but it just reduces the overall wage rate and money.
Sure. Okay. Let's jump into another issue that I know you care a lot about. As soon as you walked in, you started speaking about it, and that's the education and parental rights and some of the materials that are in public libraries and school libraries. I saw that you go to church weekly. I assume a lot of this comes from your religious background, your moral, your ethical background, and you believe that some of these materials maybe go a little bit too far. And I'm also curious, even though they are state issues with, say, AB 1955, the issues regarding teachers not informing parents of gender identity issues, and there's just a lot of controversy around what is being taught in the schools as far as social issues versus rote education. So go ahead and talk about your stance on that. You were one of the first people who brought some props with you. We won't show those on here. I'm going to leave those to school board and public meetings at the city and council level.
I'll show the cover just as examples. But
sure.
No, I believe that this California state law, first of all, California state law requires that sex ed be taught in middle school, 1 class, 1 time. There's no call for condoms on kindergarten or cucumbers at all. There's nothing in the law that requires that. Some districts do that. They start teaching sex ed from kindergarten on up to whenever they feel like it's enough. The law says 1 class, 1 time. And I believe that children should understand their body. They should know what the body parts are. It's not a wee-wee, a woo-woo, and a wah-wah. There's a real name for the thing and what it looks like. If you're a boy or a girl, you got one and you don't have one, or you have this and they have that, they should know that. If you're going to learn the patella and the metacarpals and metatarsals, you should learn the other parts in the genitalia. Mm-hmm. So I can tell you, in my own school district, and I fixed a lot of things in my district, my own school district still does, the anatomy and physiology part about the boy and the girl, or the man and the woman. And it's, they have the ovaries and the fallopians and the uterus and the cervix and all that stuff. And then when it comes to the external stuff, it's like, it's sort of all blobby. There's external stuff too there, folks. And the same with boys. And it's just like a blobby thing hanging there. No, everything should be out there, and the boys and girls should know all about their bodies and the other bodies and what they are and what the things are called, the correct name. And the reason I practice what I preach, I have one son, he's 34 years old now. He went to my public schools. I wasn't on the board when he went there. He was happy for that. Dad on the school board. We put him, and I went into a program called SHAPE. This is a pitch, SHAPE, S-H-A-P-E. It's a sex ed program put on by the Campfire for Boys and Girls. And it's a 5-week program from soup to nuts. It's phenomenal. It's everything, and it shows, and they spend it's a 3-hour program for 5 nights, so it's 15 hours. It's long. And they learn the correct names, and they must identify, and there's tests on all the parts and pieces and what they are.
But it's all biological.
Oh, no, it's not. It goes from there to how babies are made, and they have a video they show with a woman having a baby popping out. And I told my wife, if you'd been to there, we probably wouldn't have a son to worry about it. We had a C-section. Anyway, it goes, and at the end, it goes through a full contraception instruction part about all the barrier methods and the chemical methods and all those. So no, it's a full program. And they have one part. The pastor in my church helped them write, actually. They added in. They have 3 columns. They have physical, emotional, and then something else. There's labels on the top. And they have 10 words underneath each. So under the one is, under physical is talking in the phone, holding hands, arm around the waist, kissing the neck, tongue down the throat. It goes up, and they're all mixed up and jumbled. In the class, there's only 10 boys in each class. They're segregated by gender. My son went in 4th grade. When they do it in middle school, they're together. Anyway, they have to list which is small and which is big. They should know that. And then also writing notes on the phone, and then up at the top is being married. That was the emotional one, I think. And there's another category.
Yeah.
I
guess what I'm trying to get to
is no, you should be married and in love and before you have sex. That was the top one, having sexual intercourse. Okay. So that I'm in favor of all that instruction. I practice what I preach. My son is married. I have a 2-year-old grandson. He's the greatest kid in the world. And a wife. He has a wonderful wife, a daughter-in-law. So no, they should be taught, but they shouldn't. I'll show it up. This book is in all over, everywhere, LA public library system. Okay. I'm not going to open up the cover because what's in it is...
you showed me before.
And this book here, this is in the libraries. This is approved by the state of California, reviewed by the Department of Education. And then this is anyway, there's more of them. So they go way beyond just what happens.
Sure. So as a member of the U.S. House, then, how would you be able to impact, or what would you do to try to pull back some of this literature? Because then, of course, you'll be accused of book banning, and there's something to be said for that too.
I've been accused of book banning.
There's a fine
I don't want to ban
these.
They're just not appropriate. This is not appropriate for free-range reading off the library shelf for a high school student. If mommy and daddy want their kid to read it, they should be able to read it. Go check it out. Okay. But it's not free-range reading. So federal funds to support the purchase of these kinds of books for free-range reading would be controlled. Okay. So what also happens, Joe, is that the public libraries, I just found this out, I went to the LA County Library System, they'll label a book like this. They have something like kids and Y for youth, and then general for general circulation, meaning adult. They'll have this in the adult book section, and if a little 10-year-old comes out with this, they check it out to them. They have no guardrails on stuff. So there's things to be done for funding to stop that kind of thing. I think it's great in the library. This is probably the most popular book in the library because it's unbelievable. Thanks. But it's not appropriate. And I've been on national TV. I reported on, not speak. Well, I was anyway on a particular book that I stood up for to say it's not appropriate for my 8th grade boys and girls to be reading free range. It has a rape scene in it by a father or a boyfriend, has a teen lesbian scene, has a sex scene, has a teen pregnancy. These are not appropriate for little boys and girls to be reading. Okay. Because, and we're my school district, I will tout my district. We rewrote our curriculum. Overarching, abstinence is the overarching piece. Mine's an elementary district, so up until 8th grade they might still listen, we hope.
Sure.
But anyway, abstinence overall, and then 3 things underneath that. 1, I think we're the only district in the state that teaches this. 1 is illegal, against the law, to have sexual contact between minors, consenting sexual contact. Non-consenting is obviously rape. No, it's not okay. They're just teenagers. They're experimenting. They're fooling around. As long as you use a condom, it's safe. No, it's not. It's against the law. And we should teach that. 2nd, we teach it's dangerous with STDs. We do a really good job with that. And you can get herpes just with kissing somebody. 3, we teach it's immoral. Consenting sexual contact between minors is immoral. And I had administration go, oh, we don't teach morals in our district. Oh, no. I said, well, do you teach don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't bully? Yes. Those are all moral standards, folks. If you can teach those, you can certainly teach children something that'll keep them away from STDs and all kinds of other emotional and mental harms, at least until they're an adult at 18.
Okay.
That way more than you wanted to hear? Okay.
Yeah, no, it was very in-depth, so, I want the voters
talk too much
to
in depth.
understand.
I should just do top
and,
points.
and I know that issues like this are very, people feel very strongly personally about it too. And we'll let people judge for themselves about what they feel on the issue.
The boys and girls love reading this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not their choice.
Yep. So I want to go up a level to just general education, because especially here in the state of California, the academics continue to decline, literacy, math, all the basics. So as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, what kind of policies would you change in order to try to repair the education system to make sure that it's preparing students for a future that is really uncertain at this point, with technology and very strong competition from other countries, AI. I was interviewing someone here this morning, and she was a believer in universal basic income, and I feel like that should always be a very last resort.
Well, I'm not even going to address that because it's financially untenable, and it's anathema to, you end up with the lowest common denominator of society.
So we don't have to get there. What do we have to do to the education system?
The U.S. government spends billions of dollars on education with their education department. And they chunk the money into places that aren't focused on student achievement the way it needs to be. In my district, I'll pick on one of my favorite, I invented a thing called the writing continuum. So it's a writing approach from kindergarten through 8th grade that's consistent across all the years. So in most public schools, the teacher goes to a seminar, has a fantastic new approach to teaching writing, brings it to the school into her class, and the children learned this way to do it last year, they learned to do it this way this year. Not only do they have to learn the new level of writing responsibility, but they have to learn the new system and approach. Our approach is the same, and it's a really simple one. If students in high school and college wrote this way, they'd get A's in all their papers. What's your thesis? What are 3 supporting points, and what's your conclusion? Simple stuff. And in kindergarten, it's much simpler, and in 8th grade, it's much more complex. And what it does is in fact, most of the problems you talked about, school districts, the system gets giddy with excitement when the student wrote something. They wrote something. Well, it's garbage, and it doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't say anything, but they wrote something. That's not the kind of writing that I want to see. And writing is very important to express ourselves, even though we think we're all going to talk into our hands. So in my district, we have an approach to writing throughout. Then we have the 1st grade block printing, actually kindergarten, 1st grade now. 2nd grade, we go into a thing called, it's precursive. You write the letters kind of squiggly on, and then 3rd grade, my district, and Newsom just initiated this. I put in cursive writing in my district 6 years ago. And it's been the state law to teach cursive writing for 100 years. It never went away. It's a state standard, it never went away. It's always been there, but administrators were like, oh, well, we're not going to, it's too much work, we'll just work on something else. So we teach cursive all year in 3rd grade, per state standards and law, to proficiency. Some number of students cannot learn how to write cursive, a small number because of intellectual abilities and stuff, but the rest learn how to write cursive. 5th grade, we have typing. So these school districts all have, they call them keyboard skills. Have you heard that before? Keyboard skills. All keyboard skills does is give students a way to make Melinda and Bill Gates more money, because all they do is learn how to do PowerPoint and Word and Excel. That's not typing. Do you know how to type, Joe?
Of course.
Well, not of course, no. A lot of people let you know. Home row, QWERTY typing, eyes closed, 45 to 60 words a minute. You know how to do that. Where'd you learn?
Actually, in school, way back.
Junior high school or high school?
I think junior high school. Computers were.
We don't invest the time to do that. I learned in junior high school too. Now it's middle school.
Yeah.
I learned there too. We don't do that with our students anymore. So my district has a Learn It at Home program that's free, downloadable. If you're a Tiger mom, you park your kid in front of the computer and make them learn it. In 3 months, they can learn how to type. The gift that will give on for the rest of their career. That's typing.
So,
and then we
focusing back on practical skills that everybody needs.
Practical
and will save
skills,
them
yeah.
time.
And then how to take class notes. Where'd you learn how to take class notes?
I don't know.
Were you like one of those AP students when you were in school and you had all the hard?
Of course.
Okay. Well, and so you guys get that, but the regular students don't, and their notes are not very good. I'm an assistant scoutmaster, and I work with boys, now girls, in the scouting program, and I see what they do, and they're not very good. In my system, we use a approach called the Cornell note-taking, which is big ideas on this side and small ideas down here. It's a simple approach, but it helps them take good notes they can use. That's writing. Math, we have this new thing called, I forget the name, it's so disgusting. It's the math approach under the Common Core. And they have this, they teach them this one way to do multiplication that has 47 steps to it. It's a valid approach to defining and defending math, but it's stupid. You need to teach kids And they have to memorize their
So-
timetables too, by the way. These are too many details. Yeah, the basic reading, writing, and arithmetic needs to go into daily, every day, and not sight reading and the other things. Phonic reading, supported by sight reading, which can help some students. And we're not doing that. The school districts aren't doing it. It's easier just to do these other things.
Okay.
And it hurts the students. It hurts the children, because at the end, they can't read at grade level. And the number is like 50% of the students in the state cannot read at grade level. And reading is so important.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. Let's move on to another issue. I want to try to get through a few more here. So let's go.
We have an hour.
Let's go to the other end of the age spectrum, dealing with the elderly and healthcare, and also their cost of living. I know that a lot of elderly, with all of this inflation, they're having a difficult time now because they're on a fixed income.
You can say 30% inflation.
Yes. One of Trump's proposals is to remove the tax on Social Security. So I would like you to address that and any other issues that you would believe help the elderly population.
I don't think removing the tax on Social Security will fix the Social Security problem. The problem with Social Security is it was set up in 1939 with Roosevelt, when the average man died at age 65.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
guess what age they made retirement?
Sure, but
65.
I'm asking this from the perspective of it would help the elderly be able to afford their cost of living if you were to not tax their Social Security checks.
I don't think so, because 50% of this country pays no income tax at all. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
No income tax, none. And a lot of those people are old people who are living on their Social Security, even though they were supposed to save money, it was supposed to be supplemental. They're living on it. So if that's all the money they have coming in, they ain't paying income tax. So I think that's a nice thing that he came up with, the orange hair guy, Trump, but it's not. The solution is we can't have people living to 82 and 84 and retiring at 65 on a system built to take money in at age 65 and have most people dead by 70, because they ain't dying at 70.
Okay.
And we're going to have to increase the retirement age from 65 to 70.
Okay.
You can do it by steps, and it'll only be felt by people who are just growing up now, but it's the solution, because it's not meant to be a free all retirement thing for 65 to 85. It's untenable. Mm-hmm. So on Social Security, and here's the big problem, my opponent has repeatedly said on social media and on his position platform is, no, don't touch Social Security, we're going to leave it alone, leave it just the way it is. Well, if we do that, if we don't do something to fix Social Security, not taxing the benefits, that's an interesting anecdotal thing. I don't think most of the people that get Social Security are going to pay much in the way of income taxes on their benefits anyway. But the big piece is, if we don't fix it, you know what happens in 5, 7 years when it goes bankrupt? What do you think happens when the money in the Social Security Trust Fund goes down to it's bankrupt? They can't pay benefits anymore.
Then we have a
20% cut across the board.
Yeah.
What's more important, me worrying about a 20% cut for all those elderly people that are depending on Social Security, or because the feckless incumbent didn't want to do anything, or fixing the retirement age so that there's money there for them that they were promised? And I'm voting for that solution, not taxing Social Security benefits.
Okay.
And Medicare has the same problem. Oh, my opponent wants to give Medicare for everybody and suck that trust fund down to nothing in just a few years. That doesn't fix anything. It's not good. We need to fix the usages of the system, not the whoever and everybody that gets it. And you're supposed to pay into it. Yeah. That's Medicare. Medicare has a similar problem with Social Security. It's not so much the age when you take it problem, it's just that we keep adding benefits and we want to give it to everybody in the world that didn't pay into it.
Sure. And going off of Medicare then into healthcare in general, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Nicole Shanahan have made health and making America healthy again.
I love that MAHA.
A very
it's
big
so
issue
cool.
over the last couple of months. It's really blown up all over the place. So what is your take on that movement? Because it seems to be gaining momentum amongst lots of Americans in light of our 74% of Americans are overweight or obese, and 60% of us have chronic illness. So, and it sounds like Trump is adopting that part of Robert F. Kennedy's platform to make studies and look at pharmaceuticals and vaccines and the food supply. Where do you go on all of that? Because that has a huge impact on health, and the health expense is the largest line item in our federal budget.
It takes people live longer to take up more Social Security if we don't fix the retirement age problem. Okay. No, seriously, that is the problem. But no, the MAHA thing is wonderful, and am a health advocate, and Donald Trump, for example, doesn't drink, never has. Alcohol is nice and fun. I've certainly had my share of drinking. I was in a fraternity, but I don't drink anymore. I haven't had anything to drink for 20 years because it's an unnecessary part of my life. I thought I'd lose weight, but obviously it didn't work, so sorry. And that's an example of just one thing that can be done to enhance people's health. I just have an article I clipped out of a magazine The Week, and it listed all the different chemical things that are in packaging and wrapping that migrate into food. We all have Teflon in our bodies. Did you know that? We have Teflon particles floating in our bodies. And we all have that material that 3M made, Scotchgard, in our bodies. So all the years, they stopped putting it on anything 20 years ago, and you're obviously over 20 years old. So any old furniture anybody bought that had Scotchgard on it, which made it impervious to staining, it was absorbed into the body.
So are you in favor of government regulation against things that we know are harmful? Do you think that the food industry has been sort of co-opted the government to turn a blind eye to these? They call them forever chemicals, the PFAS. I did notice that at my local government level, the water district actually put in a PFAS filter to try to prevent any more of them from getting into us.
So what does PFAS have to do in the long term? Is it harmful? I'm asking you.
Yes, because I believe it's a phthalate, so it's an endocrine disruptor, just like a lot of these plastic
I don't know, I've read
chemicals
about that. Is that stuff that's in the lining of cans and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. So the government regulate, if it's a known health hazard, it should be regulated if it can be regulated. So some things can't be regulated into a level of safety, but that sounds like one that it could be, and probably should be once it's proved. But working on suspicion, because there's a lot of paranoid ninny-nannies out there that any chemical in anything, anywhere, is bad. Is Teflon floating around in your bloodstream bad? I don't know. I really don't know.
I would assume.
What?
But I don't know.
You would think it would be, but
I don't know.
So that's where I draw the line of, I think it could be, should be. Doesn't sound like a good idea, but that's not a regulatory siren call for me. Same thing with the Scotchgard stuff. There's no proof that the Scotchgard chemical, the guy that invented Scotchgard found it in his own body and was terrified. And he went to the management and said, this is a problem, you need to take it off the market, and they did. There's never an issue of did it harm anybody. It was just not a good thing. So that's the kind of action that can happen. The Johnson & Johnson talcum powder is another one. Is that a made up, really big problem by lawyers, or is it really a cancer problem that gets somehow from the outer levels of a female genitalia system into the uterus to cause cancer? I don't know. And I don't know that they've awarded billions of dollars apparently. But
you would be in favor of the government funding studies to figure these things out, which it seems like our CDC and our FDA and NIH should be in charge of.
We need to look at the data that we have. If we don't have any data, look at stuff. And if it looks like it's causing a problem, we should look at. And the federal government, the NIH, National Institute of Health, and the CDC would be the place that would go be looked at.
Okay.
But but there's a little piece there. There's a whole movement to have gun research. Are you familiar with that? The anti-gun people want to have gun research. And the laws currently in place by Congress are no gun research. There'll be no federal funding for gun research, because the federal funding for gun research is going to go get plowed into anti-gun stuff. And the people that like guns don't want to have anti-gun stuff on fakey wakey research that may or may not be worth anything. So they've taken they being the gun people, said no research at all, which sounds kind of awful, but
sure. Well, let's go into that issue. I was going to go from health into the environment, but since you segued into the Second Amendment and gun control, let's go into that. What's your position as far as gun control? Talk about red flag laws. That's been kind of an issue lately. But then a lot of people say that these things infringe on the fundamental Second Amendment rights.
Well, they can do both. There are some people, many people, you live in Berkeley, you know the people up there.
Yeah.
There are many people.
Very, not in Berkeley. I went to grad school there, yes.
Well, you know the people.
Sure.
Many people in Berkeley, to pick on them and they deserve it, think anybody that owns a gun is mentally ill. You should depend on your police department to support and defend you. 28-minute response time if you're lucky. Yeah. So the answer is, with the guns, no. And the Second Amendment, thank God it's there, allows people to protect themselves. If you shoot somebody, then you go to jail or you get executed. We don't have effective capital punishment laws, but you should be executed if you're convicted of first-degree manslaughter, killer, premeditated stuff. So no, the people everybody has a right to own a gun. I have a story. My sister, who lives in Utah, is a CCW, concealed carry weapon permit instructor. And they owned a pawn shop. She and her husband sold guns. I talked to her about getting a CCW myself, just on the principle of it. And that's when things opened up a while back. Now they're closed back up. Orange County was issuing concealed carry weapon permits. And she said, well, John, and I rent to very poor people in very dangerous neighborhoods. My income is from rentals. I manage other people's properties. I'm a licensed broker. And then I also own rentals myself. And my rentals are, I think I have 40 housing HUD certificates myself. These are poor people in the culture of poverty, in an environment of much more violence and danger. I've never felt threatened. She said, have you ever felt threatened enough by anything anywhere that you'd want to pull out a gun and shoot the person? Boom. In front of me that was threatening me, that I felt threatened by? And the answer is no, I've never felt that way. So she said, John, if you've never wanted to shoot somebody, then you should not get a concealed carry weapon permit, because if you just take it out and wave it around, that's called brandishing, and that's illegal, and you'll go to jail, even if you're under dire threats. So you whip it out, it's concealed, nobody knows you have it, so what's the good of it until you take it out? When you take it out, you must be prepared to shoot the other person. And Joe, I've never been prepared to shoot another person, ever in my life. For all the places and things I've been, never. So I never went and got the CCW, because that was interesting. And did you find that interesting, that thought process?
Yeah.
Don't be carrying the thing if you don't plan on using it in California with our CCWs. Many states have laws that say you need no permit to either carry, conceal, or open carry. I was in Arizona at a 7-Eleven store out in the countryside, and there's a guy in front of me, he had guns on both hips. It's kind of weird. It was sort of like, ooh, it was like being 10 inches away from the merchandise was odd. It's not comforting, but it was his right to carry them there.
Sure. So then I guess you believe that it should be left alone for the individual to make their choice if they want to conceal carry, if they feel like they are in a situation where they want that, or even if they just want to have it for the sake of having it, that they should have the right. And people like you have never been in a situation and feel like you won't be, so that's your personal choice to not carry.
It is. Okay. And the brandishment thing comes to mind. You remember that they were riding in St. Louis and that husband-wife lawyer team came out of their big giant mansion and waved their guns around because it's a private street with a private yard and a private development, and the BLM people were running down the street threatening to break into people's homes and stuff, rich people. Do you remember that one? And then they waved their guns around and scared them away.
No.
Well, anyway, they were arrested and put into jail by the Soros district attorney for St. Louis, Soros being he funded them, funded her. And they eventually, they made a deal, and they didn't go to jail, and they kept their bar license. But that's brandishment, and that's serious. It's a very serious thing. They should never have taken, they knew better, I think. You'd never take your gun out and wave it around if you're not going to use it.
Okay. Let's go back to the issue that I was going to segue into, which is the environment and energy. There is big controversy as to whether or not the Green New Deal is pushing green technology too far, too fast, if there is climate change that needs to be dealt with on an existential level. And a lot of people are alleging that this energy policy is one of the drivers of the inflation and increasing costs. So what's your take on green tech and balancing that with the environment?
Does the word fungible mean anything to you?
Okay.
Fungible means a dollar bill in my wallet's the same as a dollar bill in your wallet.
Sure.
And money represents a fungible value of the cost of doing things. It's okay to measure value by money, not just by social do-good. And measuring the cost value of solar generation and the cost value of windmill generation, the power coming out the other end of that wire is like almost twice as much in some cases. And by the way, I have solar on my house. I have 36 panels and 2 battery packs. So I'm not just blowing smoke about solar not being good. I have it, and it's cut my bill down, and it's a good thing. I'm glad I did it. But no, it's too expensive, and it doesn't solve the problem. The big problem solver is going to be hydrogen for long-haul trucks, is my opinion. Hydrogen for long-haul trucks, because battery packs can't work. And then it's going to be the small nuclear plants that they're developing now. Okay. Every nuclear plant that we have has been this custom, giant, huge project, unique for that spot, that place, and nowhere else. Mm-hmm. There's no, like a Ford auto plant making Model Ts, there's no production of nuclear power. And we have that now. We're approaching that where they can crank out. I think General Electric or somebody's making them. There's an acronym. It's small nuclear plant. Have you heard of them before?
Yeah, I've looked into the next generation nuclear technology, small. It does seem like it's very much more viable and safer now.
And so I'm thinking, and it's cheap. Fungible money value is a good measure of how valuable the item is. And in the case of the mini nukes, I think that's going to come, and then hydrogen is the other one. And you can take the cheap power from the mini nuke plant and split the water atoms and make hydrogen and have lots of it around to go run vehicles that are efficient running at whatever they run on across the country.
Okay. So is your take then allowing private industry to develop and push whatever technology seems most viable and relevant at the time?
Cheapest, most competitive, and most effective. Yes. And government's not. Look at our railway in California.
Yeah.
Oh, I like the government to make things for us. And there's another aspect to that too. I heard the metro, the blue line, the gold line, the green line. I heard a state legislator, maybe it was Maxine Waters even. So on these places, they all put the boards of these big projects, have all elected politicians on, so they can get buy-in or approval on things. And this person was saying, oh yeah, I had 5 interns working in my office funded by the metro and on and on. I'm going, really? It's like this make work, make believe. It added this huge cost layer to the metro, which is paid for and built now finally, but is sucking up money that you don't even know about unless you dig down deep into the deck and find out where the money's going. So no, I don't trust government to be able to do any of that effectively.
Okay. And just talking generally about seeing where all of our money is going, one of the things that seems to be popular on both sides of the aisle that was proposed by Trump/Elon Musk is a government accountability organization for someone to come in and go line item through the federal budget. Based on your statements, I would assume that some form of that you would be in favor of.
I hope it would work. The volume of lines you'd have to go through is so stunning. Maybe using AI to go find stuff.
It sounds like that would be part of it.
There's corruption is an awfully big word. I'm not convinced that there's giant gazillion trillion dollars worth of corruption to go find in the military or programs. It's just poor spending, poor budgeting, poor choices, and then what do you call it, earmarks, where the Congress and Senate folks put on special funds for their programs, like the Bridge to Nowhere in Alaska, that kind of stuff. Now that wouldn't count as corruption. It was passed by the Congress, legally proposed, but it's a corruptible idea. It should have been stopped, and it was, and he got kicked out too. Senator Stevens. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Kind of.
And going along the lines of corruption, I know that term limits for members of Congress have been seemingly favorable issue on both sides of the aisle, but it never seems to get done. So what's your take on reducing alleged corruption in government through term limits and other measures? The revolving door between lobbyists and members of Congress.
There's some of that, the revolving door part, but they're out of office now. So they don't usually come back into office once they've revolved out. So that's not the real issue, I don't think. I governed for 16 years, elected 4 times as a school board trustee. And I can say from personal experience, it takes 1 term, maybe even 2 terms, to really get the go and the mo and the joe, to understand what the process and systems are. So term limits, like city council members in cities at 8 years, most of them have that, it harms the city. The people are just like, council members are just getting into the mode of doing stuff, and then they're out of office. So you lose the experience in the background. But I think my senator, my congressman, Dana Rohrabacher, who I've known since high school, was unelected a few years ago. He was in there for like 32 years. That's a long time. So he's an expert, but is that the expertise you want? So that's my tussle. It's 8 years for a city councilman, or for, in the case of our state assembly, 5 2-year terms for an assembly member. They're just getting good at doing what they need to do, and then they're out. Like Cristina Garcia. I'm not a Cristina Garcia fan particularly, but they're just out, and you've lost the value of their.
So is there a balance somewhere in between 8 and 32 years?
By law? Well, that's what the voters are there for.
Okay.
So if you have a district that's like in Idaho, they're all Republican districts up there. If the Republican guy or gal has been in there forever and everybody likes them, then they would never get out until they decide not to be there. So is that good for the system? I don't know. It's not something I've spent a lot of time thinking about.
Okay.
I have a little bit from what I shared, but not about policy-wise to making term limits. I don't think Supreme Court justices should have a term limit.
Okay.
That's where that next one goes to, is should Congress make a term limit on Supreme Court justices? No, get all 3, get the Congress, get the Senate, get the presidency, and then pack the court. That's what they're talking about doing. It's the same thing. But that's legal to pack the court. It's not legal the term limit. In fact, there's Article 5 in the Constitution. You'd have to have 2 amendments to, to have term limits. You have to have an amendment to change the Constitution and then an amendment to make the, the difference. Yeah. It's complicated.
Well, I think law could just be made, federal law could be made, limiting it. I could be wrong.
For Congress, no, because the congressional, for term limits, no. For senators and congressmen, yeah, that could happen.
Okay. Let's go to the last big issue here, which
well, for you, I have big issues.
I'll let you wrap up however you want to. But one of the big issues for many voters is our foreign policy and wars going on in Ukraine, Russia, as well as the conflict in the Middle East. Lots of very passionate views on both sides for both of those conflicts. So just talk in general, if you want to start with your belief on how foreign policy should be handled, and specifically about those 2 conflicts.
Well, it's clear in our Constitution, Joe. It says we must go help governments form democratic institutions around the world. Okay. That's why we spend all. No, it doesn't say that.
I was trying to register and process.
There is no obligation, responsibility, or anything. So what we do is not constitutional. We just like to do it and spend $200 billion on Ukraine, for example. We have bases, men and women stationed, I think, in 140 bases around the world, like the Romans with their legions in all the countries they controlled. That's not good. We don't need to do that. If you want to get to specifics, Taiwan's a problem because of the China lurking on just a short distance away, actually. And we've had a historical relationship with China. India is not real friendly lately, but we have a lot of Indians that live here. In fact, our new vice president's wife is Indian, as I recall, soon to be true vice president. So no, we do a good job at sending aid to countries and military aid. I think that might be a good idea and a place to start, but we don't need to be sending our troops out to defend Afghanistan being the stupidest, making Afghanistan democratic and putting in all these DEI programs in because the people who are in the administration, the bureaucracy thought that was a good idea.
What about reining in the power of the administration to effectively unilaterally declare war, even though it's maybe not directly involving our military, the troops on the ground? I know that another Republican candidate for U.S. Congress that I interviewed was in favor of putting stricter controls about what kind of situations the administration can unilaterally use, send aid military to.
Where do you think that authorization to do all that comes from? Spending money. I'm going to give you a hint. Spending money, the purse strings, is the responsibility of
Congress.
Congress, the House of Representatives. These presidents, and when the president does go out and spend money illegally, people go take him to court and he loses. That Biden guy had some program he tried to put in. I think it was the student loan thing 2 years ago. Tried to spend federal money on a program to get everybody off the hook. And the Supreme Court turned him down because he had no authorization from Congress to spend the money on that. So it's the same thing, analogous thing. What you talked about, the president's right to spend money, the current situation in Ukraine, whoever else we're tied up in, they call it a continuing resolution, I believe is what it's called. It's an ongoing authorization to spend money without declaring war. The last time we declared war was World War II and maybe the Korean War. The Vietnam War was never declared. None of those were declared wars. And the job of Congress is it's in the Constitution, to declare war. And if they don't declare war, because they don't have the testicular temerity, whatever that means, to stand up and do it, we don't have a war, we just have a spending machine. And the spending machine should be and could be stopped by Congress because they're the one that spends the money. That's my view.
Okay, fair enough. In conclusion, your district seems to be leaning left, historically anyways. It's around 60-40, it appears the split is. So that means that you are going to need to pull independent voters and likely Democrats over to your side. As you alluded to in the very start of this interview, you appear to have already done that to a certain extent, since only 16% of the voters in your district are registered Republicans.
Only half of them show up to vote, the lazy slugs. And if they all showed up, it wouldn't make any difference.
Yeah.
If every man, woman, and Republican showed up, I'd be at 16%, and I earned 35% in the primary.
Yeah. So what do you say to bridge that last 20% in order for you to unseat the incumbent, Robert
35
Garcia?
plus 20 is 55. Oh, I have to have 5% to beat the cheat. You're right, I do have to have more than just 50%.
Okay.
That's not what you meant, but
Yeah.
that's a serious consideration. Did you know that there's 30% more registered voters in LA County than could possibly be there if every 18-year-old that could register to vote, that wasn't a green card or illegal alien, was registered to vote? U.S. Census Bureau population and registered voters. Did you know that?
I was unaware of that.
That's pretty stunning, do you think? 30%. Judicial Watch took them, and the True the Vote took them to court, the corrupt Logan, the registrar of voters. Took them to court, and they won because the corrupt Logan registrar of voters refused to follow the NVRA, the National Voter Registration Act, fully. He put motor voter registration in right away. He refused to purge his rolls for like 20 years. There's some apartments where people have moved in and out over the years. They get 5 and 6 ballots because he's never purged the rolls. What do you think happens to those ballots? Oh, nobody votes them because it's against the law. Oh, okay. I don't know. Make up what you want. But he lost the case, and Judicial Watch is now charged with overseeing the cleaning of the rolls. It takes 4 years to clean the rolls up because you have to mail cards and you have to make phone calls. It's a big deal. So this whole thing about the 50%, no, there's a whole lot of ballots out there floating around with unmonitored drop boxes, and Logan does not do a good job checking signatures either. Like, no, just squiggle there, okay. These things are important. And it's not so when you hear about, do you think that Trump really won or lost or whatever, that's not the real question. The question is, how is the voting done and handled underlying all of it, and you make your own mind up. In this case of LA County, it's corrupt. There are far more registered voters than could possibly be registered, because the man in charge didn't do his job and lost in court. And that's a concern of mine. I have to overcome that as well. So anyway, that's my Logan. And it doesn't check the signatures either, which is very well. Orange County does a really good job. Orange County went through and purged their rolls. It was like now 10 years ago, right after NVRA came in. And they went through the whole process. And they reduced by about 20% voters that didn't belong there, dead, dying, moved, criminal. And the voter participation rate in Orange County is around 80%. It's huge. It's because their voter rolls are clean.
Yeah.
They don't have a 30% overlay. That's a big problem, and people should know that in Joe land.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, but then going back to the final wrapping up question, let's just assume, because that's not something you can immediately control in the next 30 days. So the only thing you can control is your message to the voters in your district. So what do you say to them as to why they should give you their vote instead of the incumbent?
Did you read my candidate statement?
I did, and
So the first thing is no new taxes. We have a Kamala proposing a whole new tax on money that you haven't made yet, the unearned income tax. We have a governor who wants to tax stuff that you own, like our personal property tax we used to have on our tax bills. No new taxes, none. We already have enough taxes in California, already the highest. And my candidates, I asked that because it's no new taxes all over it. And my candidate statement is, I got to use the word, the paychecks are too damn small. And it says damn right there. Registrar wanted to refuse to let me use the word damn, claiming it was a swear word. And I said, read the Bible, it says hell and damnation. So you get your legal people to write a letter.
I know, I was a little curious as to, when I saw that on your website, if that was actually in the voter guide.
It is.
Because I've never seen a statement like that made. It's very
Paychecks
catchy.
are too damn small for my residents, especially not the rich people in Long Beach, but my upper tier in the cities that have a lot of poverty, in Maywood and Cudahy and Bell and Bell Gardens. Paychecks are too damn small, the crime is too damn high, and the open borders, the border's too damn open. And that's it, we can't have those. And I'm your family man, it's on all my material, your family man, es uno de nosotros, en español está, I'm one of you. And that appears to be winning, actually, and it's true.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming here at very short notice. I wish you the best in these remaining approximately 30 days before the election.
Muerto.
Thank you.
Thank you.